He entered the jungle alone and found the princess bleeding. The air was thick with smoke. Trees cracked and burned in the distance. Strange alien birds flew into the orange sky as loud sirens echoed from the nearby human base. Jake Matthews, a young human soldier, stood at the edge of the alien jungle. He had been stationed on the planet Valora for peacekeeping duty. Nothing exciting ever happened here, until today. A loud scream came from deep inside the jungle. It wasn't human. Jake froze. "Did you hear that?" he asked the other soldiers near the base wall. Sergeant Keller shook his head. "Stay out of the jungle, rookie. It's off limits for a reason." "But someone's in trouble," Jake said, gripping his blaster. "Then they're already dead," another soldier muttered. Jake couldn't walk away. He had a gut feeling. Something inside him told him to go. Without another word, he turned and ran toward the trees. The jungle was alive. Vines hung like snakes, and glowing plants lit up the dark path. Each step felt heavier, and the deeper he went, the louder the voice in his head screamed, "Turn back." But then he heard it again. A weak cry, "Help." He followed the sound, climbing over thick roots and ducking under giant leaves. Finally, he saw her. An alien girl lay in a pool of blue blood. Her long silver hair was tangled in thorns. Her skin was pale purple, and her eyes, half closed, glowed faintly with gold. She wore a torn white dress that shimmered even in the dark. Glowing crystals circled her neck and wrists, cracked and broken. Jake rushed to her side. "Hey, can you hear me?" Her lips moved. "Don't. Let them find me." Who did this? Please." She coughed, blood on her lips. "They want me dead. I'm not safe." Jake pulled out a med kit and quickly sealed her wounds with a gel patch. "You're going to be okay. I've got you." As he lifted her gently, she grabbed his arm. "You shouldn't have come," she whispered. "Why?" "Because now, you're part of this." Suddenly, a low growl came from behind them. Jake turned. 3 alien hunters stepped out from the shadows, tall, armored, and carrying long rifles with glowing red tips. Their faces were covered, but Jake could feel their hate. The girl gasped. "They found me." The hunters raised their weapons. Jake didn't wait. He ducked behind a tree, holding the girl close. "Stay with me," he whispered. "I'll protect you." "You don't understand," she said softly, her head resting on his shoulder. "I'm not just anyone." "Then who are you?" Before she could answer, a shot hit the tree above him. Bark exploded. Jake ran. He moved fast, weaving through the trees, using his training to stay low and quiet. The girl moaned in pain but held on. After what felt like forever, Jake found a small cave hidden behind a waterfall. He slipped inside and set her down gently. She was barely breathing. "Hey, stay awake. Tell me your name." She opened her eyes slowly. "Lazura." "Lazura. I'm Jake. You're safe now." She smiled weakly. "No, Jake. Not yet. They will keep hunting. Because I'm the princess of the Star Flame Empire." Jake blinked. "What?" "They want me dead. My own people. They think I'm a threat. But you saved me. You didn't even know me, but you helped anyway." She reached into the folds of her dress and pulled out a small glowing crystal. "This is a soulstone," she said. "If I give it to you, it means our lives are connected." "Wait, what does that mean?" "It means you are now a protector of royal blood, and the galaxy will come for you too." She placed the crystal in his palm. It glowed bright for a moment, then dimmed. Jake stared at it, stunned. "Lazura, why me?" "Because you didn't walk away." Outside, footsteps echoed in the distance. Lazura sat up with effort, her golden eyes sharp now. "They're coming again. We must run." Jake looked at the jungle, then at her. He nodded. "Then let's run." And together, they disappeared into the night. The princess was hiding a secret, and now he was part of it. The rain came suddenly. Cold drops hit Jake's face as he helped Lazira through the wet jungle. Thunder rolled above, and the trees shook as if the planet itself was warning them. But Jake didn't stop. Lazira was still weak. She leaned on him, her breath shallow. Her silver hair stuck to her face, and her skin had lost some of its glow. But her eyes, those glowing golden eyes, were full of fire and secrets. They reached a narrow cliff path that overlooked a thick valley. Down below, blue lights moved slowly. The hunters were searching. "They won't stop," Lazira whispered. "They're sworn to kill me." "Your own people?" Jake asked, still trying to understand. "Why would they want you dead? You're their princess." She looked away. "Because I broke the law, a royal law older than time." They kept walking until they found a dry cave behind thick vines. Inside, the air was warm. Jake laid her down gently on a flat stone and took off his jacket to cover her. She looked at him, tired, quiet. "You should have left me," she said. "You don't know what you've done by helping me." "I don't care," Jake replied. "You will." She touched the crystal she had given him earlier, the soul stone. It now rested around his neck, glowing faintly. The light pulsed in time with his heartbeat. "This stone," she said, "is not just a gift. It's a bond. Your life is now linked to mine. If I die, so do you." Jake blinked. "What?" "It's an ancient vow," she said, "used only by royals. I thought I was going to die, so I passed it to you. Now your soul protects mine." He sat down beside her, confused, a little angry. "So untrapped?" She nodded. "Yes, and I'm sorry. I didn't want to. But you were the only one who helped me, and I needed to survive." For a moment, they both sat in silence. Only the sound of rain echoed through the cave. Then Jake asked, "Why are they hunting you?" Lazira looked at him, her voice low. "Because I refused to marry a warlord. My father arranged it to join two empires, but I said no. I couldn't let him use me like that. I ran, and now they call me a traitor. So you're being punished for wanting freedom." "Yes," she whispered. Jake stared into the fire he had made. Back on Earth, people argued about taxes and sports. But here, people still died for saying no to power. He finally asked, "What happens if they catch you?" "I will be erased," she said. "Not killed. Erased. They will remove me from all memory, like I never existed." Jake's jaw tightened. "Then we don't let them find you." Lazira looked at him for a long time. "Why do you care so much? You don't know me. You owe me nothing." "You're right," he said, "but I know what it feels like to be alone. And no one deserves to be hunted like that." She smiled weakly. "You're strange. For a human." Just then, the cave walls shimmered. A strange hum filled the air. Lazira's eyes widened. They found the bond. What bond? "The soul stone. It's alive. It's sending out a signal. They can trace it." "Then let's get out of here," Jake said, standing. "Wait," she said, grabbing his arm. "There's something else you need to know." He looked down at her. Her voice had changed. Softer, like she was afraid. "The soul stone doesn't just bind souls. It chooses a path." "What kind of path?" "Royal protector," she whispered. "You're now part of the ancient line. They'll see you as a threat to the throne. So now I'm some kind of alien prince." "No," she said. "You're worse. You're a wild card." Suddenly, a loud boom came from the jungle outside. The cave entrance exploded in light. The hunters were here. "They're faster than I thought," Lazira said, standing slowly. "Listen, Jake, if we split up, they'll follow me. You might escape." "Not happening." "You'll die if you stay." "Then we die together," he said, gripping his weapon. Lazira looked at him, her expression unreadable. Then she did something strange. She placed her hand over his heart. and closed her eyes. A soft glow surrounded them both. Jake felt a warmth spread through his chest. Something old, something powerful, passed from her into him. "What was that?" he asked. "My last protection," she said, "just in case." They turned toward the cave opening. The shadows of the hunters moved closer. Jake raised his blaster. Lazira raised her hand, and blue fire danced between her fingers. They stood side by side. Two fugitives, one soul. They chased him through the stars. For something he didn't understand, the ship shook violently. Jake gripped the metal handle above his head as the stolen alien shuttle shot through the clouds of the Laura, engines screaming. Beside him, Lazira sat in the co-pilot's seat, her eyes glowing, hands moving quickly over strange controls. "They're right behind us," she said calmly. On the small screen in front of them, 3 dark ships followed close. Faster, stronger. Royal hunting vessels. "We can't outrun them forever," Jake shouted. "We don't have to," she replied. "We just have to reach orbit." "And then what?" "Then we jump." "Jump where?" "Anywhere but here." Behind them, red beams lit up the sky. Explosions rocked the air. Jake felt like they were flying inside a storm made of fire. But Lazira didn't flinch. Her fingers danced over the controls like music. Even with her injuries, she looked focused, sharp, like a real princess ready to fight for her life. "You've done this before," Jake said, amazed. "Many times, just never while holding hands with a human," she said with a faint smile. The soul stone around his neck pulsed again. Warm. Alive. Ever since she had given it to him, Jake felt different. Stronger. Faster. But also not alone. He could feel her presence inside his thoughts, like a whisper behind every breath. Suddenly, the stars above cleared. "We're in orbit," Lazira said. "What now?" "Hold on." She slammed her hand onto a glowing button. The stars around them twisted, stretched like paint on glass. And then, everything went black. Jake opened his eyes to silence. No noise. No movement. Just space outside the window. Deep, endless, cold. "Where are we?" he asked. "Nowhere," Lazira said softly. "And that's the safest place for now." The soul stone glowed softly between them. "This place is called the Veil," she explained. "A space between time. Only royal ships can enter it for a short while." "How long do we have?" "A few hours, maybe less. And then they'll find us again." Jake leaned back, exhaling. "Why won't they stop?" "Because the stone chose you. I didn't ask for it." "I know, but it doesn't care what you want." She looked out at the stars, and for the first time, Jake saw something in her face he hadn't seen before. Fear. "Lazira, are you scared?" "Not for me," she said. "For you." "Why?" "Because you're human, and they hate what they don't understand." Jake frowned. "What do you mean?" Lazira turned to him. "There's something I haven't told you." He waited. "The soul stone only binds to those with powerful inner energy, what we call Varus. Only royals and ancient warriors ever had it. But when I gave it to you, it responded, stronger than it ever did with anyone else." Jake blinked. "I'm not special. I'm just a soldier." "No, you're more than that now. The soul stone is growing. Inside you." He looked down at his chest. The crystal around his neck was glowing brighter. Tiny lines of light had begun to stretch across his skin, like roots under the surface. "What's happening to me?" "You're changing," she said. "The stone is merging with your soul, with your memories. Your body will soon carry its power." "Can I stop it?" "No. And if the council finds out, they'll destroy you. You'll be seen as a threat to the royal bloodline." Jake stood up, pacing the small ship. "I didn't ask for this," he repeated. "I know," she said gently. "But neither did I. They told me who to marry, how to speak, what to become. And I said no. Now here we are." He looked at her. So what do? We hide, we survive, and maybe we fight. Fight what? Everything. Hours later, the ship began to shake again. Lazira sat up. They found us. Already. They must have traced the bond again. On the screen, a large ship appeared. Black, sharp, deadly. It bore the symbol of the royal throne. They sent the judgment vessel, she said. This isn't just a hunt. This is a warning to the galaxy. What kind of warning? That no one touches the royal soulstone. No one lives if they do. As the enemy ship charged weapons, Lazira stood. We need to escape now. How? Jake asked. There's only one way. She walked to a control panel and pressed her palm against it. A hidden compartment opened. Inside was a small, glowing cube. What's that? Jake asked. A warp seed, but it only works once, and it has to be placed manually. You mean, someone has to go outside the ship? Yes. Jake reached for it. I'll go. She shook her head. No, you're the carrier now. The stone protects you. I'll do it. Lazira, you saved me once. Let me save you now. Before he could stop her, she grabbed the cube, opened the ship's airlock, and stepped out into the black void in a special suit. Jake watched helplessly as she floated toward the back of the ship. Then he heard her voice, in his head. When the warp activates, don't look back. Lazira, don't do this alone. You won't lose me, Jake. I promise. Suddenly, the cube activated. The ship bent around itself. Stars spun like fire. And they vanished into the unknown. She took a bullet for him, then gave him something impossible. Space twisted. Time cracked. The warp threw the small ship into a dead zone, a dark corner of the galaxy where even stars feared to shine. Jake collapsed onto the floor as gravity returned. His ears rang. The ship's lights flickered, then went dark. Smoke curled from a nearby console. Lazira, he called out, coughing. No answer. He pulled himself up and stumbled to the airlock. It was open. Cold air rushed in as he dragged her back inside, her body shaking, her suit damaged, one leg limp. But worse than that was the hole in her side. No, 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 Jake whispered, pulling off her helmet. She looked at him, blood on her lips, and smiled weakly. Did it work? She asked. He nodded, eyes full of fear. You did it. We escaped. But you're hurt bad. Good, she whispered, her hand reaching for his. Then I kept my promise. He pulled her close, trying to stop the bleeding with pressure and cloth. But it was no use. The wound was deep, and alien blood flowed too fast. You're not dying, he said. I won't let you. But she only smiled again. Don't cry, human. I've lived long enough to know. When it's time. Her head fell back. Her eyes closed. The soul stone around Jake's neck went cold. For the first time since she gave it to him, he felt alone. Truly alone. Jake sat on the floor of the dark ship. His hands were shaking. His heart felt like a broken engine, still running, but without fuel. She had saved him. Again. And now she was gone. He touched the crystal. Please, don't leave me. No answer. He sat there for what felt like hours. Then the lights on the ship blinked. Once. Twice. Then a strange voice echoed from the stone. Do you accept the bond, fully and forever? Jake looked up. What? The voice repeated. Do you accept the royal bond of Soulstone, initiated by Princess Lazira, daughter of the Star Flame? He didn't know what it meant. He didn't know what it would do. But he knew what he felt. Yes, he whispered. I accept. The Soulstone exploded in light. A wave of warmth spread through his body. Like a second heart, beating harder. Faster. It filled his veins with power he had never known. Visions flooded his mind. Her memories. Lazira as a child, flying through glowing forests. Lazura being trained, bow in hand, eyes focused, learning secrets of her people. Lazura crying, alone in a crystal room, begging her father not to marry her off. Lazura running, hunted, betrayed, hurt, and then meeting him. And finally, her final thought, just before she lost consciousness. I hope he lives. I hope he loves again, even if I don't. The crystal cooled. Jake opened his eyes. And then, he heard her voice. Not through his ears, but in his mind. Jake, Lazura, I'm not alive. Not truly. But part of me lies in you now. How? The soul stone holds memory, power, and will. When I gave it to you, I gave you part of me. Can I bring you back? He asked. No, but you can carry me, and you can finish what I started. The next days were quiet. Jake repaired the ship. Lazura's body lay in the back, covered with a silver cloth. Her people had chased her across stars, but now she rested in silence, far beyond their reach. Jake didn't sleep much. He couldn't. Every time he closed his eyes, he saw her face. But something else began to happen. He was changing. His skin glowed faintly at night. His senses became sharper. He could hear the smallest sound, feel the tiniest shift in gravity. And most strangely, he could touch machines and feel their memories. One morning, while working on the navigation system, he placed his hand on the ship's core and saw flashes of its past. Every battle, every repair, every command. He was becoming more than human. The stone was doing it. No, she was doing it. Lazura's gift wasn't just survival. It was evolution. One night, while drifting near a forgotten moon, the ship's alarm beeped. Someone was nearby. He looked at the screen. A single ship, small, fast, alien. Someone found us, he muttered. But the ship didn't attack. It sent a signal, encrypted, but the soul stone unlocked it instantly. The message was a whisper. Protector of the fallen flame, we have your child. Jake froze. Child. The message repeated. Lazura left something behind. Something powerful. Return her body, and we give it back. Refuse, and the child dies. Jake's blood ran cold. Lazura's memories returned in flashes, her sadness, her secrets, her final words. I hope he lives. I hope he loves again, even if I don't. But now, he understood. She didn't just give him power. She gave him a future. A child. Their child. And someone had stolen it. Jake stood, hands clenched. Then they just made a mistake. He walked to the console, lit up the engines, and stared at the stars ahead. For the first time, he didn't feel lost. He felt like a storm. They chased him through the stars because he saved a life. But now, they would chase him because he carried a soul. Because he was no longer just human. He was something new. Something impossible. And he was coming for them. He was becoming something else. And the galaxy took notice. The ship cut through empty space like a silent blade. No music played. No voice spoke. Only the steady hum of the engines filled the cabin. Jake sat alone at the control panel, eyes locked on the blinking coordinates. He wasn't flying aimlessly anymore. This time, he had a destination. A place called Alterian, a lawless mining colony on the edge of the known galaxy. The message said the child was there. Lazura's child. His child. Jake's reflection in the black glass window looked strange now. His skin had started to glow faintly, like a soft silver light just beneath the surface. Lines of crystal blue ran down his arms like veins. His eyes, once brown, now shimmered with hints of gold. He was changing. Not just inside. Outside too. And the ship, it responded to him. Without touching a button, he could command it. Doors opened when he stepped near. Controls bent to his thoughts. The soul stone wasn't just bonding. It was becoming him. Still, he didn't smile. Not once. Not after what they did. He remembered the message clearly. Protector of the fallen flame, we have your child. He didn't know if it was a lie. He didn't know if it was a trap. He didn't care. He would find out. And if it was true, if they had really taken Lazura's child, he would burn the planet. Balterion wasn't beautiful. It was gray, dusty, broken. Miners came here to disappear. Criminals came to make money. And warlords came to hunt what no one else dared. Jake stepped off the ship, his long black coat hiding the glow beneath his skin. His boots crunched over the cracked ground as he entered the main outpost. Metal towers rose around him, held together by wires and rust. The people stared at him. They felt something was off. Too clean, too focused, too silent. He asked no questions. He just walked to the center of the outpost, where a tall alien with green armor stood surrounded by guards. "Where is the child?" Jake asked. The alien laughed. "What child?" Jake reached out and touched his chest. The alien's eyes rolled back as a shock of energy dropped him to the ground, twitching. The guards raised their weapons. Jake raised one hand, and a pulse of blue light pushed them back like leaves in the wind. He stepped forward. "I will not ask twice," he said calmly. A voice behind him said, "He's lying. The child isn't here." Jake turned. A woman stepped out of the shadows, tall, silver-skinned, with glowing tattoos across her arms. Her eyes were cold. Old. "Who are you?" Jake asked. "I am Vela," she said. "I served the throne before Lazura was born. I was her mother's blade. And now I watch the stars for threats." "Then you know who I am," Jake said. "Yes. The human she chose. The one she marked with the soulstone." "Then you know what I'm here for." "I do," Vela nodded, "but you won't find your answers here." "Not yet." Jake's hands clenched. "They said the child was here." "That was bait," she said. "They wanted to see what you'd do, and now they have their answer." "Who are they?" Vela stepped closer. "The Council of Cinders, the last rulers of the Flame Empire. They fear what you've become. You are not just a man anymore. You are a vessel of royal power. And worse, you were chosen freely." Jake's jaw tightened. "Lazura didn't choose me because of power. She chose me because I cared." "And that," Vela said slowly, "is what makes you dangerous." Suddenly, dozens of red lights lit up around the square. Snipers, drones, warriors in dark armor. "They followed you," Vela said. "You've led them here." Jake looked around. "Then I'll end it here." She placed a hand on his shoulder. "No, not yet. If you die now, so does her memory. So does the child." Jake looked into her eyes. "Is the child real?" Vela nodded. "Yes, born from two souls, hers and yours, hidden far from the galaxy's eyes. But they know now, and they want it. Then take me there." "Not yet. First, we must survive this." The first shot hit Jake in the chest, but it didn't go through. The crystal veins lit up instantly, spreading across his body like armor. The second shot bounced off. The third, he caught mid-air and crushed in his hand. Then he moved. Fast. Too fast for their eyes. In seconds, he reached the nearest drone, ripped it apart, and used its body as a shield. He leaped through the air, landing on a sniper tower, and sent a shockwave down that knocked 10 men off their feet. Below, Vela fought too, spinning blades of silver and lightning. Together, they moved like thunder. But Jake wasn't thinking about the fight. He was thinking about the child. His child. And what they'd do to it if he failed. His heart burned with a fire he didn't know he had. A father's fire. When the dust cleared, only Jake and Vela were left standing. The others ran, or crawled, or didn't move at all. Vela wiped blood from her lip. "You're not ready." "I don't have time to be ready," Jake said. "Tell me where the child is." Vela sighed. "Then come with me." They walked back to his ship. As they flew into space again, Jake looked out the window and whispered, "Hold on. I'm coming." The galaxy wasn't ready, but Jake was, because he was no longer just a soldier, no longer just a man. He was becoming something else. And now, they all knew it. They offered him the throne, but he wanted something else. The throne room floated inside a crystal dome, high above a dead planet. Stars shimmered around it like a silent ocean, cold and endless. No wind, no noise, just the soft hum of ancient machines and glowing light running through the walls. Jake stood at the center of it all, staring at the high seat carved from starstone. It was beautiful and terrifying. "You are the chosen soul," a voice said from above. Jake turned. 12 alien figures stood in a circle, tall, robed, faces hidden behind gold masks. They called themselves the Council of Cinders, the last rulers of the Flame Empire, now broken. "You carry the mark of our royal line," said the tallest one. "The Soulstone has accepted you, and so must we." Jake said nothing. Vela stood behind him, watching quietly. "We offer you the throne," the council continued. "Sit, and the galaxy will follow your voice. Planets will kneel. Armies will rise at your command." Jake looked at the throne again. For a moment, he felt it calling him. But then, he remembered her, Lazura, bleeding in the jungle, laughing in the ship, whispering in his mind, "I gave you my heart, not my empire." "No," Jake said. The room fell silent. The council didn't move. "Explain," one said. "I don't want a throne," Jake said. "I want my child." The air changed. Vela tensed. "You know where the child is," Jake continued. "You've known this whole time. The message, the bait, you sent it to test me." One of the council stepped forward. "And you passed. Then take me to them," Jake said. The masked face tilted. "Why choose the path of a father when you could be a god?" "Because a god rules with power," Jake said, "but a father protects with love." Vela smiled softly. The council whispered among themselves. Finally, the lead figure spoke again. "Then listen, Protector. The child was hidden before Lazura died. She used her last strength to split her soul and plant it inside a crystal womb, deep within the mountain world of Selforth." "Alive?" Jake asked. "Yes, but not safe. Others know now. Enemies, thieves, seekers of royal blood." "Then I'm going," Jake said, stepping back. But the council wasn't done. "One more thing," the leader said. "If you go to Selforth, you cannot return here. The throne will vanish. The bond of empire will break." Jake laughed once, bitterly. "I never belonged here." And he walked away. The ship jumped through space like a stone skipping across a black sea. Jake sat in silence as Vela guided them closer to Selforth, a dangerous, volcanic world hidden behind plasma storms. Few dared to visit it. Even fewer came back. "You still don't understand," Vela said quietly. "Try me," Jake replied. "You think this is about love, or about family, but it's more." "Then explain." "Lazura's child isn't just your blood," she said. "They are the final seed of the royal line, and you carry half of that power now. If they grow, they will become something the galaxy has never seen." "Good," Jake said. "Let them see." Vela looked at him. "You're not afraid." "Only of not getting there in time." Selforth was angry. The planet burned with storms of ash and fire. Red rivers of lava flowed through black mountains. Lightning danced through acid clouds. Jake's ship landed on a narrow platform surrounded by cliffs. He stepped out, covering his mouth as the air hissed. Vela pointed to a glowing cave. "In there," she said. She buried the crystal deep inside the heartroot. "It's protected by ancient life." "What kind of life?" Jake asked. "The kind that doesn't forget." He entered alone. The cave was alive. Walls pulsed like muscle. Strange lights moved inside the stone. The deeper he walked, the more he felt it, the pull of the soul stone inside him. It hummed louder, like it knew what waited. Finally, he reached it. A large tree of glowing roots stood in the center of a red chamber. Wrapped inside the roots was a crystal shell, shaped like a cocoon, and inside it floated a small figure. The child. Tiny, peaceful, silver skin, gold eyes closed, floating like a dream. Jake fell to his knees. He reached out, touched the shell, and it opened slowly. The child's eyes opened, and Jake's heart broke, because he saw her. Lazura, in the curve of the child's mouth, in the light of their eyes. And also, something else, himself. He picked up the child, wrapped in glowing cloth. It didn't cry. It just stared at him, blinking slowly. And then it smiled. Jake held it close. "I found you," he whispered. "I found you." But behind him, the cave roared. Vela's voice came through the calm. "Jake, move. Now." The cave shook. From the walls, dark shapes emerged. Creatures made of ash and bone. Guardians of the heartroot. They sensed the royal power leaving, and they were angry. Jake ran. The child pressed against his chest, glowing bright. The monsters followed, dozens, screaming. Jake reached the entrance as lightning struck the cliffs. The ground split. He jumped. The ship caught him midair. Vela dragged them inside and slammed the door shut. The ship shot upward, flames below. The child laughed softly, unaware of the danger. Jake held them tighter. In orbit, Jake stood by the window, holding the child as the planet faded behind them. "What will you do now?" Vela asked. "Disappear," Jake said. "Find a quiet place. Raise this child far from kings and killers." "They won't stop," she warned. "They will come again." "Then let them come," Jake said, eyes glowing. "You gave up a throne," Vela said, "for a child." He looked at her. "No, I gave up power for something stronger." "What's that?" He smiled. "A reason to live." He returned to the place he saved her. Now he must save their child. The jungle was still there. Wild, glowing, alive with colors no human world could ever grow. Years had passed since Jake last stepped into this place, but the memory of it was sharp, fresh, like a scar that never faded. This was where he first saw her, bleeding, afraid, brave. This was where it all began. And now, he had returned. But he wasn't alone this time. He held the child against his chest, wrapped in soft blue cloth. Tiny hands clutched his jacket. Soft silver eyes blinked slowly, peacefully. They had no name yet. Jake had waited, not because he didn't care, but because it had to be the right moment. And that moment was now. He knelt in the clearing where she once lay, surrounded by vines and starlight, and placed a single crystal flower on the ground. "I brought them home," he whispered, "just like I promised." The jungle wind blew gently, and he felt her, not in body, but in spirit. Her soul stone still glowed around his neck, soft and steady. Sometimes it was silent. Other times, he could hear her thoughts, like distant memories rising through mist. Right now, he felt warmth, a kind of peace. The child reached up and touched the stone, and it pulsed. Jake froze. His heartbeat slowed. And then, her voice returned. "You kept your word." He stood slowly. "Lazura, you brought them to where love began. They deserve to know you. Then tell them everything." That night, he sat near the fire, and he told the story, not just of war or death or running from power, but of kindness, of choice, of a brave woman who rejected a crown to protect her heart, of how she fell in love with a stranger, a soldier, a human, and how she left behind a piece of herself that would never stop glowing. The child listened, not understanding the words, but feeling the truth. Their small fingers reached for the sky, where stars blinked like slow tears. And Jake knew this was right. This was home. But peace doesn't last long in a galaxy built on fear. They came again. Not in ships, not in armies, but as whispers. Agents in shadows, watchers from broken empires. Someone wanted the child, not for love, but for control, for royal blood, for power. Jake felt them long before they arrived. The Soulstone warned him. Vela returned, older, colder, but loyal. They know you're here, she said. Then let them come, Jake answered, standing. We can hide you again. No, no more running. Then what? We let them speak. Under the jungle moon, a group arrived. Not warriors, but elders, advisors of a crumbling empire. They stood before Jake, cloaked in gold and shame. We come for peace, one said. Jake held the child in his arms. You had your chance at peace. You chased it and killed it. We didn't know, the elder said softly. But you know now. They nodded. This child is hope, another whispered. Not just power, not just blood, but a chance to begin again. Not under your rule, Jake said. This child will grow free. And if we let you be? The elder asked. What will you give the galaxy? Jake looked at the stars. A story, he said, of how something broken can heal. They left without war. And for the first time, Jake felt the galaxy breathe again. News spread, not of violence, but of a protector who turned down a throne, of a princess who died for love, of a child who might one day change everything. No one knew their name. No one knew their face. But the legend grew, not in cities, but in quiet voices, told to children before bed, told to soldiers before battle. Do not fear the unknown. For once, a human soldier walked into a jungle and came out carrying the future. 1 year later, the child took their first steps. They giggled in the grass. Jake laughed and held out his arms. You did it. Vela sat nearby, watching with a tired smile. Have you picked a name yet? Not yet, Jake said. You're waiting for something. He nodded, for a sign. The child walked toward him and touched the Soulstone. It pulsed, and a single word entered Jake's mind. Soft, gentle, but clear. Solara. His eyes filled with tears. Solara, he repeated. Your name is Solara. The child smiled, as if she already knew. Years passed. Jake grew older. His powers dimmed, but his heart stayed strong. And Solara grew into a light the galaxy could not ignore. Kind, wise, strong, half human, half royal, but fully free. And one day, she asked him, Dad, why did you never take the throne? Jake looked at her, his daughter, his legacy, and he said, because you were worth more. And she nodded, and the stars above them burned just a little brighter.